Hello and welcome to this Roll for Crit Gen Con 2024 wrap-up. I'm sorry this is coming 2 weeks late from Gen Con ending, but I got pretty sick after Gen Con and you might be able to still hear some of that nasaliness, but I'm now ready to tell you about everything I saw and demoed at Gen Con. I've got my notes here on my phone, and we're going to actually start off with what would have been one of the videos you've seen me been releasing where there's more one-on-one recorded at Gen Con. But unfortunately, this set of videos, I didn't plug in the mic, I guess. Something went wrong, and unfortunately, the audio didn't come out great. So instead, you're going to hear it here, and I apologize in advance because I actually thought they were some pretty cool discussions. I got the chance to head over to Paizo to not only talk with the associate publisher, Thurston Hillman, but also with the creative director, Louis Loza. They were some really cool conversations, and unfortunately, you're only going to get a bit of a summary here just from me. So my apologies to both you, as well as both Thurston and Louis. Anyways, Paizo has a lot on the table, and we're actually going to start off with Starfinder, and it's one of the reasons why you'll now see a link at the bottom of this video. This will be just up during the Paizo discussion, but please definitely check it out. That's because Starfinder is now in its testing phase. We talked about this a bit last year, but they're going to release a new second edition of Starfinder, similar to the second edition of Pathfinder, though unlike Pathfinder, which was more about the being sort of forced into having to make the second edition because the OGL issues. This one is more of a cleanup and just a shaping up for Starfinder. Now, right now, you can head to the link down below, once again, still there, and you can go and test out the page and then report back and let them know what you found was good, what was bad, so they can make sure that the second edition really shines. Now, of course, there are going to be a lot of different changes. One of the big ones that they mentioned that probably is the one if you already know Starfinder, you may notice more, is the action economy. There's also going to be some changes to what's included in this core book versus the previous one. The example was that the Technomancer as well as the Mechanic are probably going to be in a separate book, and there'll be a separate playtest for them as well, and probably in a book that's more technology related. They also mentioned, though, that the classes are going to be tuned up in a way to make them feel like they're their own classes, rather than the space version of the fighter or just, Pathfinder in space. This is meant to feel like their own separate thing, which of course, because they are based on similar rules, you could find a way to port one into the other, though. Remember, some of the classes in Starfinder are built around guns, so make sure you know how to balance that in your campaign if you bring them to Pathfinder. They talked about how the new products they'll be releasing are the new Player's Book, the GM Guide, and the Alien Archive. However, if you are trying this beta test and you really like it and you want to try things more out or just get some product early on, later this year, the Galaxy Guide is going to be released before the official second edition stuff, but that should be designed and tuned with second edition in mind rather than more of the first edition of Starfinder. So if you really enjoyed that beta test, which link down below once again, please go and try it out. You should be able to pick that up a little bit earlier to whet your appetite until the official release later on next year. But of course, this is Paizo. Starfinder isn't the only thing they have. We've also got Pathfinder. Now, Pathfinder, if you didn't know, had its big shakeup with a god dying and causing some pretty big consequences in the world. The god in question is the god of war, Gorum. I think there's technically other war gods, but this is like the big one. And the idea is, we talked a lot about in the interview, once again, really wish I didn't screw up the audio, is the idea that when you kill a god of war, it's not that war disappears. Rather, the god of war was more like the governor modulating the aggression, war, competition, that spirit within the world. And with the god dying, it's basically like you slammed into a fire hydrant. And now in this case, that aggression is just spraying everywhere. Hence why you're going to probably hearing a lot of the god's reign. This is basically the god's armor, blood, like just raining upon the world. They mentioned like some of their ventures, you're going to start off on the edge of this reign. So, and as the world progresses, you get more books and stuff. This is not something that's just be a one-time, hey, in this adventure, the god reign appears and disappears. This is something that's going to be probably involved in your games, be it within actual product books, adventures, for many more years to come. There's also a new book called, The God's Reign. So that will be another novel if you want to read more of the story that's set in the world of Pathfinder as well. In addition, one of the big things, including, a god dying, is that the newest book is going to include 2 new classes, the Spiritual Animus, which is all about dealing with spirits, both the classic, talking with dead spirits, as well as spirits that just exist in the world, like nature spirits, as well as the Exemplar, which, for lack of a better term, seems to be the sort of like old school Greek mythology. You have maybe like a special relic or weapon, winged boots for Perseus, or maybe an ancient sword. You got your King Arthur kind of thing there. It's meant to be for the player who wants that old school mythology feeling for their character. Now, in addition to that, they also mentioned one of the new books, the Pathfinder Lost Omens Divine Mysteries. This one's all about gods as well as religion and how you may want to play a more religious character. And maybe if you have a specific god in mind, it would go into much more detail. In fact, Thurston actually wrote one of them. So maybe if you pick that up, try to guess which one that they were involved in. So it's perfect for the cleric out there or anyone who, I know, at least for me, if I want to play something that has religion, a bit more of an aspect to it, it's nice to know a bit more of like what they stand for, what's right and wrong, rather than just saying, I worship a god of trickery. So definitely something worthy to check out. And in addition to all these projects, we should congratulate them for their win for the Diana Jones Award for the Paizo Union. So congratulations again for that, as well as for all these really cool sounding products. And one more time, if you don't mind, please go to the link down below. It's something that was said multiple times in the interview, and I'd feel a little bit better if you even just took a look so I don't feel as bad that I unfortunately weren't able to give Paizo their own videos that were some really fun discussions. But moving on from there, we're going to continue onward and talk about a lot of different things I saw. Some things may be really quick because maybe I didn't get as much time. Maybe other things I'll go in more detail if I demoed. The first thing we're going to go over actually is the Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. This is similar to the Seven Wonders Duel in a sense, but it's definitely not just Seven Wonders Duel with Lord of the Rings art. There is more going on to it. There's a whole thing with territory control and depending on which of the wonders you buy. And instead of the usual war track, which is more of a tug of war, here it's representing the chasing of the ring, the hobbits. And there's actually a little slider track that's clear. So it's really fun and interesting to see how that moves up as the hobbits move the whole track while the wraiths, I'm blanking now, of course, but we'll slowly move up that as well. And of course, there's a bit more of a streamlined with how resources work. Definitely seems really cool. It was something more presented to me. I didn't really get the demo in full, but moving on from there, there's The Mandalorian. I actually got to demo this. It's a little interesting because they kept saying like, it's not a campaign game. You can just choose whatever scenario you want, but the more you play, you unlock stuff to add to your game. So I guess it's still not campaign, but in my head, it still feels like it has all the trappings. Regardless, though, playing it was a lot of fun. It's by the same people who did the initiative. It has a similar system where you have to work together to stack cards in the right number order. There's going to be penalties if you go too high, so you're going to be trying to do numbers in the right way. Cards can add extra bonuses as well as want to be put into certain piles because the piles are basically the actions you can take, attacking, moving, intel gathering, things of that nature. So there's always this, do I put the card here because it's better number-wise for that pile, or do I put it over here to get a bigger bonus because it's designed to go into the attack pile? So it's one of those games I think will do a good job if you really like cooperative and cooperative discussions because you really do need to talk about what cards you can and cannot play in order to beat all the different scenarios. Though I have been told that one of them at least does involve a traitor. So you're going to get that aspect in there as well. But moving on from there, I saw the Arkham Horror RPG. Big fan of Arkham Horror. Obviously, would love to try this out more if I could ever get people to stick around for an RPG game. But the way that this one was described was this is meant to play a bit more aggressively or a bit more of that hobo with a shotgun, so to speak, maybe literally. But the way that it works here is you have a ton of dice, but what you can roll will actually be measured by your health. So every time you take health damage, you roll less dice. As well as mental horror changes which dice you roll, which can cause certain consequences. So there's going to be a lot of managing your health and sanity. That way will actually affect your dice rolls a bit more rather than saying like, I have a strength score or dexterity score. And of course, monsters have very similar aspects too. They all have their own sheets. This is just a beginner's kit that should be coming out, but there will also be, I think, the full-on classic player's book for your guide, that a little bit later. So from there, though, I saw the Alpine expansion for Forest Shuffle. This had a new terrain type and, of course, new strategies. For me, obviously, the vulture is what caught my eye just because I happen to like vultures and condors. They also had a Gen Con promo there, which is really clever. It doesn't say Gen Con, but the animals on the card are based on animals native to Indianapolis. So very clever way to make a Gen Con promo. Then moving on, I saw a thing called Very Bad Lands. This looks like a quick, silly card game all about extinction. You play as dinosaurs, basically trying to be the one who remains standing. Each card has a different kind of extinction with different number values. You don't want the lowest one, But of course, it's not simply just numbers. They all have different abilities. So you're going to have to learn how to play the cards, when to play them, and how to mess with your opponent's cards as well. Then there's NecoGima. This is a game in which there are going to be poles with strings attached to represent powering lines, and you need to stack them all around this small board, trying not to knock everything down. So it's got that Jenga-esque style feeling, but there's a lot more to it. You roll dice to see where and how you can place them. And of course, sometimes opponents can mess around and tell you where to place them. You may be forced to hang these cats, which can set off the balance and knock things over. So a lot of fun. If you do enjoy any style of dexterity games, definitely check that one out. I will be hopefully reviewing that sometime in the future. Then I got the chance to demo Dead Cells. I will admit I have not played the video game for this one before, but the game itself here was a lot of fun. We did a 4-player game, which in that style game, when you go into combat, one player has to step out, which actually was really interesting because the player steps out can get an upgrade depending on how certain cards flip. I really enjoyed that because you had to talk like, well, right now with how my thing's set up, I have a higher chance of getting that upgrade. So maybe I should step out, or you should step out because in this combat setting, it's not going to work well for you. You don't have the right cards. Once again, preventing a bit of that quarterbacking, you all have to discuss how things work, though. That was, I believe, only in the 4-player setting. I'm not sure how that would work in the lower player counts. Though this is a roguelite in the video game, similar thing here. You're going to go through different dungeons, and when you die, you go back, but you can keep certain upgrades into your loot pool so you can keep getting stronger items that way. Overall, I did have a lot of fun, and it did leave me wanting for more. So to me, that is a very good sign, especially for something like a roguelike, which you expect to play over and over and over again. From there, I played a game called Zigurat. This is actually a legacy game designed with families in mind. It's got this little Zigurat temple in the center. Each chapter is going to have its own different requirements. What I thought was pretty cool is the Zigurat itself is going to rotate and change. Certain things on there could be hurtful or friendly depending on the scenario. And most importantly, everything is in the book. That means as you're reading and going through the chapters, once you unlock something, it'll be in the book that you rip open, which could be new pieces, stickers, whatnot. So a really fun way to have that legacy elements, but it's all kept in a much more neater package. Then I played a game called Cities. This is an interesting one in which it's really just a big drafting game, but not just drafting cards. You choose each round where you're drafting from the tiles, the kinds of buildings, or the kinds of bonuses. So there's all this. You're not simply just choosing what you need, but you have to choose like, I need to focus more on tiles right now, or getting the components, getting the first player marker. And there are, of course, public goals that are actually based on cities. So you'd be like, we're playing in New York for this game, or we're playing in San Francisco, so on and so forth. And then you have to set up this little tile. The tiles have different requirements, saying like you can only put a blue building here or a green building there. Definitely something to keep out. Like I said, drafting, if you really like that, this probably adds a bit more of the element besides just simply passing a hand of cards around. Then this is one I got to see that I know is probably, it was pretty big at Gen Con. A lot of people, this was one of those games that was selling out really fast, and that's Rock Hard 1977. And in this game, you will play as a rock star with your own manager, and you do start with a job. And each round of the game, you're going to have to make decisions on whether you're going to actually go to work, whether you're going to focus on music, whether you're going to go to the radio. And it's all about trying to balance all that out, including initiative. In fact, if you don't go to your job enough, you will be fired. And there may be other ways for you to earn money, but it probably won't be as much initially as your job. But of course, if you're able to make it big, who cares, right? So that was one that looked really interesting, really fun. And of course, the fact that dials go to 11, how could they not have that? Then I stopped by this one. It's Wandering Galaxy. I like the entire Crossroads series, just showing off some pictures right now. There's a big map of like tiles in the pirate themed one. And one of the fun things they did mention is that there are a bunch of different first player markers, and you tell which one you decide to use in the app, and that will change some stuff like the noises you click. So once again, just how they add a lot of little small little humorous things. And if you like any style of storyish campaign games, I cannot recommend the Crossroad games anymore. They always are an absolute hit at my table. This one isn't much, but Legendary, they're releasing a new second edition. This time, if you don't know, the original Legendary core set, all the art is the same on the groups. All the Spider-Man cards look the same, all the Hulk cards. Now, all the cards will be different. This, in addition, though, there is going to be some tuning to the cards, balancing certain heroes as villains. And though this is the big one that's most interesting, Deadpool, who was in the original core, will not be in this one for, from what I can tell, some licensing issues, and will be replaced by the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man. The Legend fans I know are actually really excited about this, even though it's not technically new cards. It is a big swap and change. Then I tried out Oh My Pigeons. This is a very quick, chaotic card game. If you like those silly, fast-paced ones, this is definitely going to be the game for you. It can go very quickly and can really shift really fast. Then I checked out Fate Forge Chronicles of Khan. This is a story-based game, but one of its big things that it talked about was trying to make sure that you could actually set up and play the entire game in the time it takes to set up maybe some other campaign games. It had this really cool system of comboing different dice and get what you want. So it's not simply just rolling more dice or re-rolling, rather how to maybe add these two dice symbols to make a new dice symbol that combos with this dice symbol in order to get the critical hit that you were hoping to get. And as well as the maps themselves are designed to be quick, but also offer a bunch of different choices. Like you can go this way, which may give you a different reward, but it's also taking a longer route, or maybe there are more enemies. Another thing to look at if you enjoy campaign games. Moving from there, though, we're going to talk about video game Shadow Veil. This is actually based in the Legend of the Five Rings. This is an auto battler in which you will be building up characters from the Crab clan. As of now, supposedly you may meet other members from other clans, and you will be sending them out on missions in the sense that you'll be going through a lot of different battles back to back. Each battle, you'll be choosing what to equip as you'll earn more loot as you play, to which characters. You'll put them in starting specific positions where there are enemies on the other side of the board. I only saw goblins and an ogre, and it sounds like it's mostly going to be fighting monsters. Other clans may make appearances, but it sounded like more like story beat, maybe saying hi and popping in and out, rather than you like fighting specifically the Lion Clan or the Dragon Clan. And the idea here was you'd send them out. There's a lot of different upgrades. You can actually combine some to make stronger items. Then you may come across usually choices they mentioned, like, will you get more people on the field, or will you strengthen one of your own units? So do you go wide or tall? And then you'll go back to a camp. So it also has some roguelike elements as well. So I think right now they just said Steam, but like I said, I think when I was talking with them, definitely this sounded like something that would be great for a mobile device, because simply playing while you're on a plane or on any form of public transportation, that seems like the perfect place for those kinds of auto battlers, at least for me. Then I saw Babylon. This is a really fun little 3D builder. Each person is going to be building their own sort of hanging garden, and you'll be doing so through these pillars, but there's more than pillars. You're drafting tiles to build onto things. You can decide whether to go wide or go very tall. And those tiles can also allow you to build, if they match your flower color, then you'll get extra bonuses. You can build fountains, you can build statues and stairs, but they require certain tiles to be next to them or on different levels. So there's a whole lot of planning around and trying to build your fun little 3D garden, so to speak. So if you ever have a lot of fun with that kind of building stuff, definitely check that one out. Then there was Phantom Inc Arcana. This is Resident Games. Phantom Inc, highly recommend that game. This is their newest expansion. It was just on crowdfunding a little while ago. It is standalone, but you can obviously mix the two together. It adds some new cards. They said, like, try to make some more weirder cards in there. Like, what kind of pants would your object be, or what would it wear? But this is the actual thing I think that's going to attract more people. They added these new powerful tarot cards. The medium can use these to basically get either a one-time bonus or just give themselves a permanent throughout the game rule. But they only have so many of these crystals to use to activate the tarot cards, so it's going to be balancing how you use those. Once again, Phantom Inc, I highly recommend. Maybe you wait for this new one, maybe pick up the other one so you can pick up the new expansion later and combine the two together. Either way, if you do a lot of like games, especially with larger player counts, I think this is absolutely fun. It still works at smaller ones too, but this is one you can always keep around just in case, you have that big party, whether it's like New Year's Eve or just a general large gathering. From there, though, there's The Gang. And this was another game that I think was like selling out within the first 30 minutes or so at the convention. This one's really interesting from Cosmos. It's actually cooperative poker, but the way it works is at the beginning of each round, you're going to decide and tell people just like, I think I would have had the winning hand, or I think I have a decent hand, or my hand is going to be the worst at the table. And you're going to do that every time you flip a card into the river until the final round, in which case you will reveal your hands. And if for that final round, you all guess correctly of who has the best, second best, third best, so on and so forth. And then from there, you need to succeed 3 times before failing 3 times. There's also upgrades you can add for like make the game harder for every time you succeed, or make the game easier for every time you fail. So it's a lot of fun. Once again, just going with the great theme. I think poker is still a mechanic that can be added to other games and do a lot of really cool stuff with. So definitely check that one out. Then headed over to the giant CGE area where they actually had a fun little alchemist booth where you can actually go in and throw some potions into a pot and then get a pinned based on what would come out. But as for the game itself, the way it works is it actually doesn't have a lot of rules in the beginning. It's very simple, but as you play more and more, it unlocks boxes for you to add more rules and components. But if you want to play with maybe someone who's a bit younger who didn't play through the modules and didn't learn, it's easier for you to go back to some of those earlier, simpler rules. So it's a way for you to add a bunch of complexity and let your kid learn and add more rules as they go along in a way that better fits maybe their learning curve, as well as maybe take a few steps back if they bring a friend over who isn't used to maybe as many board games or hasn't played as much as Little Alchemist as them. I also saw Snatch It, which is this crazy, very take that frog game. You are trying to capture these cards that represent insects into your belly, but people can steal them from you if you don't eat them right away. And it all is about matching colors and numbers, and then a stork can come by and just mess around with everyone. So if you want a very quick, but also very, like I said, take that style of game, take a look at this one. And then there was SETI. This was not available for purchase. It was all like demo stuff. But in my Gen Con preview video, this is one of the games I was most excited for, and it did not disappoint. It has so many cool, fun elements in how you're upgrading your probes, sending them out to different planets. You actually can discover different alien life, the different alien tiles that you don't reveal until partway through the game. It just has so much stuff you absolutely love. There's the board rotates too, so you have to maybe plan out how you send out your probe. If you want to hit like Jupiter, for example, like, well, maybe I need to wait until we rotate more, or maybe like, oh, I can slingshot now. I can take advantage of things. There's a lot of fun stuff going on there. So if you like these bigger, heavier games, I highly recommend you keep an eye on this one for when it has its full release. Then from there, well, another heavier game, Luther. This is from the people who did Distilled. I recently did a review on that. Absolutely love the game. This game looks to be just as fun too, except you're making musical instruments. That'll be coming on, I believe, Kickstarter pretty soon. And one of the things I just want to show off really quick that was really funny is this little dice box that made music, which I thought was pretty cool. And there, I got to head to a Flat River group event where they had a bunch of games from a bunch of different publishers. First one is called Octopus Cube. This is for a younger audience, but I still thought it was really fun. You have the octopus, which is represented by a cube, which you're going to actually rotate around. It has magnets in it in order to pick up the tiles you're trying to collect. So a very fun, interesting game of like find the right path to collect all the tiles you need in rotating your cube in the right way so it can pick them up. But they also had Magic Maze Tower, a new Magic Maze. It had some changes, like they took away the little slam down the red tile because the one person isn't listening, but also have some boss levels and stuff. So definitely check that one out if you enjoyed the first one. Then there was a game called Tower Up I got to demo. This one is really interesting. It's basically area control management, but it's not simply that you claim a building. Each building, you'll be placing it on different spots, and then you'll place your color on top. But certain buildings can be certain heights. So you might be able to permanently claim a spot, or maybe you can claim someone else's building and then make it to your own. There are going to be different bonuses saying like the first person to get at least 5 buildings with gray in them, or being the first one to be in each district. So there's this whole back and forth trying to outmaneuver and outplay your opponents. And in particular, you have these little scoreboards, which allow you to, every time you place a building of a certain color, you move up in that track. And if you reach far enough, you get an additional action. So sometimes it's all about setting up your board. So when you build, you get a bunch of additional actions. You can just take like 5 turns in a row. Well, that would actually be pretty hard, but maybe possible. Like 2 or 3 turns in a row would be more likely. Either way, definitely one of those games that rewards the person who can plan like 3 or 4 steps ahead. Then I didn't really get to play this, even though I should, because it's actually a beloved game. That's the new Yokohama. Don't know, Yokohama used to be with Tasty Minstrel. They went out of business. This was actually probably one of the biggest games in their collection that everyone's like, I need to get my copy. Well, they got a new version. I have an image up here. Looks really nice. And some small tweaks. So you can now pick that up. It is now no longer out of print, which is always really nice. Next, though, from Horrible Guild, a company that I always feel like has some really clever, fun games. They have one called Spotlight, and that one does not disappoint in my previous description. It has both a competitive and co-op, but the way it works is each player has this little board, and it looks really dark and hard to see, but they give you a flashlight, which actually has a little white circle in the back that you slide around underneath, which actually makes the image clear. And you'll be basically doing like I Spy, trying to spot things and within a certain amount of time. And it was just such a clever, fun little thing that it's one of those things that's like so different that alone just gets you interested. But the fact that it had different modes for ways of scoring, like cooperative mode, you both are scoring separately, you both need to be right while Moon is chasing you. And the competitive mode, you can probably guess. And if you played enough and like, I know where things are, they made it so you can make it more difficult by saying like, all right, you need to say where they're located, how many might be only in this district or this district, things of that nature. So plenty of ways to keep up that replayability, though. I'm sure this could have expansions that are just more sheets After that event, I did head to a Star Wars event. I already put a video out for that for the Star Wars Unlimited card game. And this was just a fun little draft with other content creators. Fortunately, I'm not that experienced in the newest set. So I didn't do so hot, but it was an absolute blast to just sit around and draft and talk and play games. So that was a lot of fun. The next day, one of the first things I got to try out was actually the Star Trek deck building game. So going from Star Wars to Star Trek. This I actually got to talk to the creator about, and it looked a lot of fun. It was played a little bit more just discussion of it, but it definitely was less of a just deck building with Star Trek. There was a lot more going on there, which I thought was really cool. And it also felt like it really captured a lot of the characters. I think did a good job for Star Trek fans, and definitely I'm probably going to get as a gift for the Trekkie in my friend group because I think he's absolutely going to adore it. But from there, I actually played the Captain Flip game, which was a nominee for the Spiel, and I actually had a lot of fun with it. It was a very interesting game of like, I don't want to say push your luck in a way, but you are like every time you take a tile, you have to decide whether you flip it over and you'll have to stick. And there's this whole management of like, I want to leave this space open because the cook gives me more money for filling up an entire row. So I can make a lot of money there. I'll take another gunner, but if I get 3 gunners, then I blow up and I lose. So unless I get something to flip a card, I got to deal with that. And I don't want to use the top space because that works well with this. Basically, all this like fun, quick planning in a very light game, which I think does a really good job of keeping those two in balance. So I can see why it got the nomination. Then from there, I went to the op. There were 2 big games I wanted to tell about that are available. One was Stock Exchange. This basically was this game all about manipulating a flower marketplace. So you have to decide what you plant, but then you also have to make sure things go up in value. So you have to decide how you're going to balance and make sure that you're the one who comes out on top with the most expensive flowers. But the other big one was Gnome Hollow. I believe they told me it was sold out by the time I went and talked with them. Big game about gnomes. They actually was if you've ever been to Gen Con, there's usually a balloon project out front, and this year was based on the Gnome Hollow game. And this one was all about like laying down tiles, trying to make these fairy rings, basically rings of mushrooms, and you can make it harder or easier based on whether you're just making the rings, or whether you, of course, have to make very specific patterns with those rings. And of course, there's more other ways for you to score as well. So a much heavier game from the op. Speaking of which, they did show me one game that they have working on. They don't have anything final yet, so I'm just showing the box cover. It's called Tea Witches. This is, if you can't tell, the same artist as Flamecraft, Sandra Tang. So absolutely love it. They did tell me that if you look at that image, you may see little like living, they call them, I believe it was tea pups, like living tea kettles that you actually will be filling up as part of the game. From there, I headed over to Friendly Skeleton where I saw 2 games. I saw Speed Colors, which is a game all about trying to color in these little cards, but the way you color in is based on an image you see the back of. You can have to memorize it really quick. Obviously, it's not like colored the way you think. It's going to be a lot of different rainbow colors and flipped over, and you have to try and color them correctly within the lines and finish before your opponent does, because then that means they haven't colored in everything correctly as well. And of course, there's only so many markers too, so part of the game is trying to take the markers your opponent's currently looking for. Then from there, it's obvious. That's the name of the game. It's obvious. This is a game in which you're going to be asked a question like ketchup or mustard. You're each going to secretly vote which one you think is whatever choice, how you choose it, probably because it's the one you like more. And then you will reveal people's votes without knowing who voted for it. Whichever one has the most votes is the obvious answer, and everyone else who voted on the other one is oblivious. And then it becomes a traitor game in which you're trying to vote out all the oblivious players. So a fun little arguing style kind of game, and hopefully you're able to hide in the crowd. Or maybe you're always on the obvious team, because you should be, right? Then I headed over to Board and Dice and saw Minos Dawn of the Bronze Age. Big, heavy game, a lot of these cool elements of, you're not just rolling dice, but depending on the values, they're more stronger if they're higher here, but lower here. Different tracks, you got to decide to go up. There are multiple cards, and you actually swap them out when you get the later game to give the stronger cards you want. Everything that I think you'd want from a Board and Dice style game. From there, though, I headed over actually to North Star Games, and the big thing there they told me about was Nature. We've talked a little bit about this game before. This is their sort of almost like third step in the evolution line. Though, unlike the previous 2, this one is a bit more modular. You choose how you want to play based on the modules you want to throw in. They actually showed me off like the Excel sheet showing the different rules of like, this led to the dinosaur one, this led to this. I'm like trying to get different ideas for newer modules. I actually was given a prototype copy, so I'll be doing a preview video for that when it goes live on crowdfunding a little bit later. So keep an eye out for that if you want to learn more. Then I headed over to Wise Wizard Games, And the big thing I talked about with them is actually their new TCG, Draconus 8. This is a trading card game they're releasing that's also going to have a digital version, and they'll basically actually be intertwined. So the way it works is all the cards are all square, and you're going to have different creatures with values all along the edges, trying to play them in a way on the grid such that you beat your opponents while trying to shore up and defend your weaker sides. Now, cards come in a bunch of different types, such as, if I recall, there's like elementals with stone walls that stop you from attacking from those sides. There are people who can attack diagonally, so on and so forth. But let's say that you had a golem card you open in one pack could, while it has the same ability and art, could have different values along the sides. So it's not simply just gain the card you want, but maybe you want, for whatever reason, you want cards that are stronger on this side because the other cards you have are stronger on another side, things of that nature. So that's going to be some of the collecting aspect of the game. Each of your decks will also be led by a dragon, which is, of course, going to be your big bomb. Plenty of fun different dragons as well. So a lot of collectability, trying to integrate it with a digital version and reward you for doing both. And I believe that, if I recall correctly, I didn't put in my notes here, but I think the digital version also has like solo mode stuff too. So that's a way for you to play like just a more campaign style or story style game rather than just constantly going head to head with another player. So keep an eye out for that. I think that one's coming to crowdfunding as well. This one, a little bit light. I didn't, unfortunately, get to play it, but I know it's big and hot, and that's a Slay the Spire one. It looked like it played very similar to the video game. I have not played a lot of Slay the Spire, unfortunately. Just bad at playing everything, too much of a backlog. I know people love the video game, and I think that was one of the things selling out too, but I think they only had the collector's edition at Gen Con. So then I checked out a game called Overlords of Infamy, which is a really silly style game where you play as villains, trying to mess around with each other as you place tiles to gather resources, move the heroes so they mess around with your opponent rather than you, all the while trying to complete your different schemes. These schemes being a bit more on the zany side, such as digging up more potholes or turning everyone's shower lukewarm. It's definitely the kind of game if you enjoy that bit more tongue-in-cheek kind of humor, but actually have, some gaming elements there. Then I was actually invited to check out the fan roll booth. They do a bunch of cool components, mostly dice for your games. Definitely, if you're looking for some cool dice stuff, like they had these ones with Invincible in it. But the big one that I thought was really cool was based on the original old school D&D dice, the different prime colors. And they actually have an older set where the numbers aren't colored in. And they include both a crayon, which was the original way you colored in, or a pen because the pen just looked better than the crayon. So allowing you to go as classic or more modern as you want while still celebrating the original D&D. Then I headed over to Restoration Games. Their big thing there was crossbows and catapults. They actually had a big booth where you can mess around. And I mean, it's Restoration Games. They're able to bring back these classic games like, oh, look, it's just a little toy, and be like, no, we've made it a game this time. And for this one, they actually, I was told they actually worked with like someone who worked with tons of plastics and like toys from Hasbro to make sure that these the catapults would actually, work really well and, be able to continue working for multiple playthroughs, which I thought was really cool. The other thing, which was they had on display there, so not much, but I also think it's like the perfect fit, is a new Unmatched cooperative set, and it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Absolutely a match made in heaven. Coolest thing. I think if you're a fan of either Unmatched or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you got to pick this one up as soon as it becomes available. Definitely such an obvious choice for the series. A few more before we wrap up. First, I had to stop by Everything Epic Games. They've always made things I absolutely adore and love, including one of my favorites, that they had the second edition out for Secrets of the Lost Tomb. They also had some of their new RPGs there, so definitely a game if you like more like that theme and story, you got to check out what they have to offer. I also stopped by Leaders Games booth just to stop and say hi. Obviously, their big game, and probably, I know for a lot of people, the game of the convention was Arcs, but we actually have played it a bit already as someone backed it in our group. It was Jonathan who backed it. He absolutely adores them. And so we need to play more of it. We've only got one game in, but there's a reason why people like it. I'll say that at least. Moving from there, I also stopped by Shadowborn Games. They made Oathsworn, a game I absolutely adore and love. But they have a new game there, Avalon the Riven Veil. This is based, you could probably guess from the name if you know a little bit about Arthurian lore, King Arthur. And it's all about going to Avalon, and it's this interesting game where you are moving armies in a bit of a fog and war map. There's actually tiles with fog that you have to flip over to reveal there could be monsters there, which some of them you can recruit. Sometimes you can mess around with people. They have these beautiful miniatures. This time your leaders have these like clear plastic. There's also a Green Knight, that's actually meant to balance and will help out whoever's like not doing as well. So I absolutely adore that. The Green Knight is going to make an appearance there as well. That one also is crowdfunding, so keep an eye out for whenever that project goes live. And then Pandasaurus, the one game that caught my eye there was the box top pinball haunted house. This looked like an interesting, weird dexterity one where the box actually becomes different layers, and you're going to be flicking dice, trying to, in a way, like play pinball, keep your dice on the board without hitting any of the holes that make you go out. So I'm sorry that for this listicle of everything I saw at Gen Con. I hope you enjoyed, and if there's anything you're more interested in, please let me know, because then if you say I should really focus on this game, I will try to make sure, if I don't already have a review copy, I will try to gain it some way, whether I talk to the publisher or just buy it on my own, and then therefore be able to play and tell you my thoughts on it. Other than that, it was an absolute great Gen Con until I came home and got very sick. But once again, just had a lot of fun there. Thursday itself weirdly felt more like a Saturday of previous Gen Cons. This one, I haven't looked up yet, but it definitely broke tons of records. And I cannot imagine the Gen Cons in the future going less. I think it's going to grow only bigger. And hopefully Indianapolis can make sure they can fit us all there, be it in hotels as well as floor space. But that is everything I have to say right now. Let me know if there's anything I missed and I should have seen, as well as, once again, anything that you were excited about if you went to Gen Con. Love to hear everything you have to say in the comments down below. Once again, sorry not only for releasing this video very late, as well as sorry to Paizo for messing up that interview. And sorry for you guys for not seeing it, because like I said, they were actually some pretty fun interviews with some really cool information. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit from Gen Con 2024.